comfortable posture. Let's begin doing the 9 breathing exercise. Remember the main points. Put your thumbs on the ring finger below, pressuring. Close your fingers. Put them on your thighs. Straighten your elbows, straighten your back. Visualize central channel, blue color, running from the head to the navel chakra, 4 fingers below the navel. The red and the white channels running parallel from the nostrils up to the head, running down and connecting below the navel with the central channel. Men with the white channel on the right and the red on the left, and women with the red channel on the right and the white channel on the left. Let's bring the right hand, sliding it up, exhaling. Exhale all the air. Now extend your arm, do a curl, cover your left nostril and inhale deeply through the right, feeling that channel, white or red, clear light corresponding. Bring it down to the navel, connect to the other channel, change nostril, cover the right nostril and exhale through the left. Exhale all the stale breath with dirty energy, dark red of attachment or dark white of anger. Again, inhale clear red or white light. Exhale. One more time. Men, inhale white light. Women, red light. Wisdom and compassion. Exhale. Men, dark white, light of anger. Woman, dark red of attachment. Now bring your hand down. Let's move the left hand up, exhaling completely through both nostrils. Cover your right nostril, and men, inhale red light, woman, white light. Pass it through the other channel, cover your left nostril and exhale through the right. Dirty energy of attachment and anger, completely exhale. Two more times. And we bring hand down, stretch your elbows, move your body slightly forward. Inhale through both nostrils, blue light, clean light of wisdom, enlightened light. Bring it down through both channels, down into the central channel, and bring it up, exhaling through both nostrils. Dark blue light of ignorance. Inhaling again, that blue clean light through both nostrils. Bring it down, sustain the breath for a moment at the navel, contract the muscles up, and move your body slightly to let the light come into the channel, and exhaling through both nostrils. One more time. Inhale up. Bring it down through both channels, connect to the central channel, contract muscles, vibrate a little bit your body, shake it, and exhale completely. Empty your body. Now let the breath be natural, take its natural rhythm. Adopt the posture with your hands resting on your lap or on your legs. Let your breath be natural while controlling it. Let's set our motivation, intention for this practice so we can cultivate greater balance, learn to practice calm abiding, find peace and grounding in the present moment. And then we apply these methods in order to gain greater wisdom, greater well-being, and have a positive impact in the world and those around us. Now become aware of the sounds around you. Close sounds, distant sounds, without labeling or judging them, without attachment, without grasping, without rejection, just notice them. We are directing our attention to the auditory field. We can only perceive sounds with the auditory consciousness. Listen the sound of my voice, the sound of the birds, the sound of your breathing. All sounds are happening right here, right now. Arising, dwelling, and dissolving. Now move your attention to the tactile field of perception. Feel the sensations arising in your body. The perceptions on your skin. You might still perceive sounds, but now you're not paying attention to them. Now your focus is on the tactile sensations throughout your body. Recognize any sensations of solidity, touching the cushion, the sensations of your hands resting on your lap. of your tongue touching your palate, sensations of movement throughout your body, tingling, vibrations, sensation of the breath moving throughout your body, the blood flowing through your veins. We can only perceive this with a tactile consciousness, tactile field of perception. Notice how they arise, dwell, and dissolve. Now let's move our attention once more. Notice any smells or lack of smells. Maybe you can perceive the smell of incense coming from the meditation hall, or so smells of nature coming through the window. Maybe you can perceive your own smell or not smell. This is another of our senses. And now check if there is some taste from this morning breakfast. Maybe you still have some remaining taste in your mouth, or no taste at all. Just notice what is there. Now open your eyes with your eyelids completely relaxed. Leave your eyes resting in front of you, the vision around 1 meter or 1.5 meters. Just where they rest naturally, with your eyelids completely relaxed. Notice any visual perceptions, colors, shapes, textures, shadows, lights, without labeling, without distraction, without grasping. Don't move your eyes around. Just notice anything that enters that field of perception from where you're sitting. It might not be evident, but visual perceptions are also arising, dwelling for a moment and dissolving, and giving rise to new visual perceptions. We might have a sense of continuity of these appearances. They look more solid, more permanent. But we know by inference that they are changing moment by moment. Notice if there are any visual appearances that manifest and pass in this moment. And now, let's move to the sixth of our senses, the mental field, mental perception. Leaving your eyes open and resting, instead of focusing on visual perceptions, focus on the space in front of you, with your eyes relaxed, as if you were daydreaming and not paying attention to physical perceptions. Now recognize the space of the mind, the field of mind where mental events arise. Notice there are thoughts, ideas, memories, emotions. You might perceive there is an internal dialogue or chit-chat, a voice that you can hear, your own voice. Pay attention to these mental events. Notice how they arise, they dwell, and they dissolve back into the space of the mind. Without grasping to the contents, without chasing them or elaborating thoughts about the thoughts that arise. Just see them, watch them as perceptions that are being projected on the space of the mind, as if you were watching a movie and you were noticing that these are projections on a white screen. If there is a space between them, or if you don't perceive any mental events, just rest in that space, waiting until the next mental event arises. If you are confused or cannot find the space of the mind, consciously generate a voluntary thought. For example, think of a pink elephant and then watch that thought arise in your mind and then watch it dissolve back into the space of the mind. And stay in that space, waiting for the next mental event to manifest. And just watch it without grasping, without distraction, until its dissolution. If the thought, I don't have any thought, arises, watch that thought that just arose. See it manifesting and dissolving back into the space of the mind. If you find yourself caught up in the contents of thought and being distracted, release grasping and bring back your attention to the space of the mind and whatever is arising in the present moment, without grasping, without distraction. Let's finish dedicating this practice, the merit we've cultivated by training our minds in this meditation, so that we can continue balancing our minds, developing greater concentration, presence, and apply it to the practices on the path that can lead us to genuine happiness and fulfillment, and that we can be of benefit to others as well. Stretch a little bit. Open your eyes, come back. So this is another of the Shamatha practices we can do. In this case, we are not paying attention to the breath and the sensations of the breath, which is the most known meditation practice. Most people know how to practice mindfulness of breathing. It's taught in many retreat centers. Yet is not always the best practice for all of us, right? It's very easy, and it has a lot of benefits to practice mindfulness of breathing because it's an object that is always with us, and the more we observe the breath, the more it self-regulates. We start breathing better, and our mental states become calmer. It has a lot of benefits, and it's very easy to identify the breath. We can very easy notice the sensations of the breath, identify the object. But this practice is slightly more difficult because it's not as easy to identify the space of the mind, even though it's also always present, right? But it's more kind of untangible. Yet we are always having thoughts, emotions, memories, and this internal dialogue. So the thing is just identifying these mental events and the space where they are manifesting. And that becomes our object of meditation. Not only the space, but also mental events arising and dissolving in that space. When we talk about space, we can also call it field. Like we have auditory field, visual field, tactile field. We talk about mental field. And we can only perceive thoughts, memories, emotions with the mind, right? So that's our mental perception. Now, this practice can be very helpful for many of us, especially if you're having some trouble with mindfulness of breathing. You might be feeling a lot of physical sensations, or it might just be uncomfortable to do mindfulness of breathing. And this practice, some people find it very easy to do and very helpful. It's called settling the mind in its natural state. It's also called taking the mind as a path in the Dzogchen tradition. And it's not easily found. I don't think I've ever heard about this practice in the Theravada tradition. They usually practice mindfulness of breathing, but in the Tibetan tradition we find it more. It's more common, and it's a great practice because in the Shamatha progress of the stages of the Shamatha practice, eventually we want our focus to be mental. When we do mindfulness of breathing, a mental object will arise called the nimitta, and then we will do the switch to that mental object. But we are dissolving the perceptions, the physical perceptions of this realm. In Buddhism, we talk about 3 realms. The desire realm, which is the realm we are operating now. Then there is the form realm and the formless realm, right? And those 2 are more abstract, or more not physical. So when we achieve shamatha, we gain access to the form realm. And so we can only access that realm through the mind, not through the senses. So as long as our object is physical, we won't get there because we keep engaging with the desire realm. So with this shamatha practice of settling the mind, we are from the very beginning going into the mind and kind of focusing, putting our focus there, and not paying attention to the physical perceptions. And by doing that, that physical realm will dissolve in a way. When you are in a state of shamatha and samadhi, the perceptions just dissolve. And then you can re-engage with them. It's like when you go to sleep every night, all the physical appearances dissolve. You're falling asleep and you hear the sounds distant until you don't hear them anymore. You don't perceive visual perceptions because you close your eyes, but if they were open and you were asleep, you wouldn't perceive any physical appearances. Same with the tactile sensations. You even stop perceiving your body when you fall asleep. Now we enter sleep non-lucidly, and so we are not aware of the whole process. But if we develop some ability in lucid dreaming, we can fall asleep and see this process of dissolution of the physical appearances. So when we practice settling the mind, we're focusing on the space of the mind and whatever arises in that space, but not the content. So to give you an example, if you're watching a movie and at the beginning of the movie, you might be aware that there's people sitting around you in the cinema, you see the bag of popcorn on your lap, you are aware of the screen and even the projector and the images on the screen, right? But as you get entangled with the content of the movie, you stop perceiving the things around you, even your body, and you're totally immersed in that movie, believing that the characters are real. You get upset with the villain and you get identified with the hero and you start crying or laughing. You're totally fusioned with that story that you're watching, right? But if you were a critic and you're watching the movie to write a review about it, maybe you are kind of watching it with a little more distance, but still you are engaging with the contents and the photography and the film, how it was edited or something. But we can even take another step of distance and keep perceiving the cinema, the people, the popcorn, and be totally conscious that there's no people there, that there's no story, that perception is not real at all. And that what we are seeing is a projection of images made of light projected on a white screen, right? So we can still see the movie, but our perception of it, we're not fusion with the content, right? So in this similar way, we're watching our mind. So let's say a memory arises of your childhood or of something you lived a few weeks ago. So you see the memory. Oh, there's a memory. It's arising, it's manifesting. You might even remember the space you were in, the people, a lot of details. But you're taking distance. You're seeing it's just a memory arising in the space of the mind. Oh, look, now it dissolved. I'm not experimenting anymore. It just vanished, right? But you're not making thoughts about that memory. Oh, this happened because I was a child and I had this problem and I suffered so much. And then you're making a lot of thoughts and comments and analysis about that memory. No, we're not grasping to that memory. We're just seeing that it came and it went. And then you notice that there's an emotion that just came, right? Maybe it's associated with a memory, maybe not. But suddenly you perceive like there's some sadness or some joy or some depression, something arising. You say, that's another mental event. I'm perceiving it. It might permeate all the space of the mind. You might feel like you're immersed in that emotion. But if you're just observing it as a mental event arising and dissolving into the space of the mind, you're not grasping. You let it arise and dissolve, and you're watching the whole process, right? And then there might be moments where you don't perceive any mental events. So you're just resting in that empty space. But as you progress in this practice, you might notice there are very subtle events that normally we don't perceive because they're kind of below the threshold of consciousness, where they're kind of happening at a subconscious level. But now because we're paying attention, we're able to see them. And so there's like an idea that starts forming, and then it dissolves. Or you might notice you have thoughts about the experience that you haven't recognized as mental events. For example, I don't have any thoughts. That's a thought. But you say, I don't have any thoughts. There's nothing. There's no mental events. Well, that's a thought. So you turn your awareness to that thought and see it as it develops and dissolves. So there might be ideas. There might arise a judgment. Like, I can't do this meditation. That's a mental event. There might be a feeling. And these feelings have their own category in the 4 applications of mindfulness, but they're mental events. So there might be a pleasant feeling, an unpleasant feeling, and a neutral feeling. We will see, we experience this also in the body, but the label is mental. We are labeling something as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So you can also see, oh, there's a pleasant feeling arising, or there's an unpleasant feeling arising, and you observe it. So all mental events, we watch how they form, how they arise, and how they dissolve. Okay? And that's our object of meditation, our object of shamatha. So if we're distracted, it means we got caught up with one thought, and we are making more thoughts about the thought, and we are carried away, and we are daydreaming. If we realize we've been distracted, we just release that grasping to the content and observe that same mental event, but now from the perspective of observing it, watching it, manifesting as a mental event, and it becomes our object of meditation, and we are not distracted anymore. Okay? So this practice can give us a lot of insights. There might be a lot of insights arising related with emptiness, with the emptiness of the mind and the emptiness of mental phenomena. But right now we are doing it as a shamatha practice, as a practice to develop calm abiding and develop concentration. Okay? So we will be doing it more so that it becomes clearer, but I wanted you to know it in case you've been doing a lot of mindfulness of breathing for the last weeks. So if you want to switch to this as your main meditation practice, that's okay. And it's try it, experiment with it. It might feel more, it might feel better for you. So you can also do some sessions of mindfulness of breathing, some sessions of settling the mind, or you can also, in one session, start with mindfulness of breathing, and then when you're calm and relaxed, you can switch to this practice. And if at some point you're doing this practice and you have the experience that you're lost, that you don't know what you're watching, what's the object, then you can go back to mindfulness of breathing. So experiment with it. The idea in a session is not to be switching objects every minute, like very fast, but you can do half of the session with one object and half of the session with another object. That's okay. Just stay some time there. And if you cannot identify thoughts, this is a common thing. There's a funny example about, when you go to a place where there are cucarachas, and then they are kind of enjoying whatever food there is, and they're having a party, but you turn on the light and they run and they hide. So that's like with this practice, when you look at the space of the mind and the events, maybe you put too much intensity, and then all the thoughts run away and they hide, and you can't see anything. You just have to learn to be just there waiting and not intimidating, so that they start coming back and arising, and you can observe them there, right? But it's common that this happen at the beginning. So you can generate a thought. We have involuntary thoughts that we are not deciding to have, they're just arising in our mind. And then there is voluntary thoughts. So we can create a thought anytime. We can say, I'm going to have a thought. That's a thought. Or you can think of an apple. You can think of a memory like your bedroom or your house or your children or your loved ones. And that's a thought, right? But we are not engaging with the content and being carried away. We're just watching the thought. So is that clear? Do you have any questions, any comments? Yeah?
So every time we do this, we do the 5 senses and then come to the mind, or is just a...
That's a good question. You don't have to do the 5 senses. I just did it this time so that you have more clarity about how are the perceptions on each field, and recognize that the mind is a field itself that has its own objects of perception. You cannot perceive thoughts with your auditory field or with the tactile. In the same way, you cannot perceive visual forms with the tactile field or the smell. Each one has their own objects of perception. Now you might say, well, the mind can have kind of visual perceptions, and you can have the memory of a smell so clear that it feels like you're smelling it, or a sound. So it's true that the mind has this power of kind of replicating smells, sounds, sensations, visual perceptions, but they're mental events. They're kind of memories or visualizations that we are able to bring in that, manifesting in that mental field. But most of the time, you can recognize if you are seeing this object with your visual field, and now I hide it, visualize it here. Maybe you can see it with your mental perception, but it's different, right? It's not as sharp as seeing it with your eyes, with your visual perception. Yet, if we develop the ability of the mind to visualize, and we use this a lot in the tantric vehicle, in the vipashyana, for different practices like sadhana practices, like we were talking about Vajrasattva, Tara, or other practices where we involve visualization, we can develop that ability to a degree that we almost see that three-dimensionally present. So there is another shamatha practice that we might do a session or a little bit so that you have a sense of it. It's common in the Tibetan tradition, but not so much when we have a secular meditation, because it has an aspect of faith and devotion. It's called a virtuous object, and it's visualizing the image of a Buddha. And when we say Buddha, because all these are Buddhas, we're referring to the image of Shakyamuni Buddha, the one we have in the back, golden, and small in front of us, a little image of the Buddha. It's a virtuous object for what it represents. It represents our inner nature, our most primordial mind. So when we visualize that, we sustain our attention in that visualized image, and we develop shamatha on that object of meditation. So the Tibetans are used to visualize the Buddha as a shamatha object of meditation in the Tantrayana vehicle. You can also do shamatha with the visualization of the sadhana, with the visualizing yourself as a Buddha, reciting the mantra, and doing the whole sadhana. But you need some training, you need empowerment for that. But the visualization of the Buddha, you can do it. Yet it's more difficult for us to sustain the visualization for long periods. Your mind can get tired, and we're not as familiar with that practice. It can bring lung to the head if we don't know how to do it with a lot of good foundation on relaxation. Yet it's a virtuous object, and if you want to practice with it, you can practice, and eventually you will see that image so clear and three-dimensional, and because you've developed hours of focusing on that image, that it will be as if you're seeing it with your eyes, right? So that's what we call virtuous objects. The breathing is what we call a neutral object, because it's not virtuous and it's not virtuous, right? It's just neutral. Yet, focusing on the breath is very easy because it's always there. We don't have to do any effort to generate it, to create it in our mind's eye. And the same with settling the mind in its natural state. The space of the mind is there, and there's always going to be thoughts, memories, emotions arising. So settling the mind can be a good practice for many of us. Any other question? Yeah.
Yes, actually 2 questions. First, the simple one. We do this always with open eyes, or we can do also this?
This practice is recommended to do with the eyes open, because we have this tendency of closing our eyes and start daydreaming or getting lost in thought. And when we open the eyes and we perceive the space in front of us, we also start kind of breaking that boundary between the space of the mind and the physical space. We have this idea that we are inside this body, and then everything else is outside. And so we have this duality of me being inside and you being outside, right? And feeling that this mental space is somewhere inside my body or inside my head, and the physical space is out there, separated. So, because this comes more from the Dzogchen tradition and the Vajrayana vehicle, it's a shamatha practice that is leading us to other more advanced and profound practices. So just by doing it, we are kind of start releasing that grasping to being a solid self, separated from everything else. And we start seeing that the space of the mind is actually bigger than we thought, for saying in a certain way, right? It's not inside our bodies, it's not inside our head. So there's an example I like that Alan uses a lot, and it's like, if you visualize, he says, if you visualize Bugs Bunny above my head, is that Bugs Bunny arising in your mind? That visualization is, what would you say? Yeah, it's in your mind, right? In the space of your mind. Yet, it's over here. It's not inside your body. So you can visualize very far. You can visualize something that is on the other side of the world. You can think of a lot of things. So we start seeing that the space of our mind is actually everywhere, right? There is no limits. And that everything, and that's what we are going to discover as we do more vipashyana practice, not just shamatha, because in vipassana we start investigating reality. But we will discover that all these phenomena we are seeing, we are hearing, we are perceiving, are arising in the space of the mind. Now you might say, well, but there are others that are also perceiving that. Are they perceiving my mind? No, each one of us is having their own appearances. Yet there's intersections. We're interdependent. We're living a similar reality, but it's not identical. To give you an example, the perception I have right now of this room and of all of you is very different from the perception each one of you is having. You're sitting in a different spot in this room, and what you're perceiving in front of you is only the appearances that are arising to your mind, to your visual perception right now. And they are different from her perception, from his perception, from your perception, from my perception. They're similar, right? But they're unique. The perception of your own body, the perception of yourself, and the perception of everything else is arising in the space of your mind. You have your own set of appearances. Now we think, well, but there must be something out there. There must be a room out there that is the real perception, the real room with the real perceptions, independent of all our different perceptions. Well, according to Buddhism, there is no room outside of our perceptions. There is no people. There's no perceptions outside. And if there are, we will never know. Because as soon as we perceive them, they are perceptions in the space of our mind. Otherwise, we wouldn't perceive them, right? So by focusing on the space with the eyes open, we're starting to break those boundaries, and we are starting to gain deeper insights that will arise maybe during the shamatha practice. But right now in shamatha, we are only cultivating relaxation, stability, and vividness of the mind. We want a mind that is calm, that is present, that is sharp, that we can direct towards our chosen object, and then we can apply this more refined, more present mind to the investigation of reality. But if we start investigating reality with vipassana without having a foundation on shamatha, what happens is that we do a little analysis or a little investigation, and 2 seconds later we're thinking about what I'm going to do tomorrow or when I come out of the retreat. Then you come back to the investigation, then you forgot you were doing the investigation, your mind is all over the place, or you're sleeping or you're distracted, right? So we cannot get a deeper insight if our minds are all out of control, wandering, distracted, right? So there is this metaphor of having an axe and wanting to chop the roots of a tree, in this case the roots of ignorance, right? We want to cut that tree from the bottom, from the roots. And if we have shamatha, we might be able to hit the tree, the trunk, on the same spot, because we have that quality of refined, stable attention, concentration, like a laser that we can direct to one point. So we can hit in the same point, but we don't have the sharp edge of vipashyana. Our axe is kind of blank, dull, smooth. We are hitting on the same place, but no matter how much we hit in that same place, we're never going to cut it, that root. And then on the opposite, if we have the sharp edge of vipashyana, this penetrating wisdom, this wisdom of investigating, but we don't have the attention of shamatha, we're going to be hitting the trunk up here, down here, in all the places, and we will never cut it because we're not hitting on the same place. So you might investigate a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit here, but you never concentrate all that investigation into a wisdom that is really transformative. So you need the shamatha to hit in the same place, and you need the vipashyana, the sharp edge, to investigate and direct it and do it in a sustained way for a long time until it really becomes transformative and has the effect to help you see reality as it is and not as we think it is, right? As we are constantly misconstruing reality, projecting permanence where there's no permanence, projecting positive qualities where there are no positive qualities, grasping to that interpretation and getting attached to things, people, ideas, situations, or projecting negative qualities, grasping to that interpretation and rejecting, fighting, getting anger towards that we perceive as enemies or obstacles, right? So we need both. And so right now we're using this practice of settling the mind as a shamatha practice. And then as we go into the 4 applications of mindfulness, we will see how similar it is with the 3rd and the 4th application of mindfulness, where we investigate mental phenomena, and then we apply that investigation to all phenomena, okay? But right now, practice it as a shamatha practice, and do it with your eyes open, very relaxed. Okay? Well, thank you.